Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining. We're just going to take a minute to let students enter, and then we're going to go ahead and get started with the webinar. Okay, we can go ahead and get started. Students have started joining, and then they can keep joining as we go. Before we let Ryan take over for the presentation, I would just briefly like to talk about Education USA and USCFP. Before we get started, I would also like to introduce myself. My name is Natalia Khan, and I work as the Education USA advisor at the Lahore office. We work with Education USA and USCFP. To introduce USCFP, it's the binational commission between the governments of Pakistan and the government of the US. In Pakistan, Education USA is housed within USCFP. We have our flagship program, which is the Fulbright program. It is a fully funded a scholarship for master's and PhD students. At Education USA, we are a part of the US Department of State. Since we work with the US Department of State, any and every information that we give out is accurate, current, and comprehensive. We help students find their best fit university, and we help students with their application process to the US free of cost. These are just some of the services that we offer. We have free in-house sessions, such as this one that you guys have joined today. Sometimes these sessions are virtual, sometimes they are in person. You can go to our website, Education USA Pakistan, to look at the schedule. We have free workshops for the GRE, the SAT, and TOEFL. We're actually having GRE workshops these days. If you go to Education USA Pakistan, you can look at the schedule. We have a resource library. Our office in Lahore is located within FC College. So we have a resource library there if you ever want a quiet place to study, if you want to use the SAT books, you're always welcome to. And then our most famous service is going to be the one-on-one advising. You can go to our website, you can sign up for advising services. We're three advisors in the Lahore office. All three of us are US grads, so we have that one-on-one experience, and you will be assigned an advisor, and then they will work with you throughout your application process to help you out with anything. Here is our email. If you have any questions, if you have any queries, just leave us an email. And with that, I'm going to give it up to Ryan, and I'm going to stop sharing my presentation. Thank you so much for taking time out for our students, Ryan.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you for having us for this session. This is the second time we've been here to provide some information around the college application process. For those of you who have not joined a session with any of us before, my name is Ryan Carroll. I'm one of our senior assistant directors of undergraduate admissions at Johns Hopkins University. I cover much of South Asia for our office, and I've been working with our office for about 8 years now. So quite a bit of time with the undergraduate office at Hopkins. I'm also very lucky to be joined by one of my colleagues today. I'll let Eva introduce herself very briefly as I get the PowerPoint shared.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Eva English. I am an admissions officer in the Johns Hopkins University Office of Undergraduate Admissions. As part of my international territory, I'm covering a lot of the Middle East as well as Central Asia.
Perfect. So we've got a good amount of information to share with you all today. I'll be walking us through this PowerPoint. Eva will be kind of behind the scenes. If you have any questions as we go through this PowerPoint, feel free to add those questions to the Q&A feature of the webinar. Eva will be able to answer them. We will also have some time at the end to answer additional questions that you have. But please know as we go through this session, you are welcome to ask questions as we go, as we do have a lot of information to cover. Today's session, these workshops for us, we typically range from 30 minutes to an hour and a half Today, we're going to have around an hour. We're going to talk at the beginning of this session a little bit more about what holistic review in the United States means. We're focusing our session on the essay today, but the essay is one part of a much larger college application. So we want to kind of frame our language in what the essay does within that larger application review process. We'll talk about the role of the essays, both the personal statement and supplemental essays that you might be asked to write. And then we'll do some activities. We've got some example essays to look at and to discuss as a group before we dive into what it takes to get started, some tips, some tricks we have before we go into the Q&A. So this is the general outline of the session. Once again, if you do have any questions as we go through here, please feel free to add those questions to the Q&A and we'll be able to answer them as we go along. But to get started, a lot of the language we use today is going to be through our perspective as an admissions office at Johns Hopkins, but most of what we talk about will be applicable to any college or university in the United States. In the admissions process at Hopkins and many schools in the US, colleges and universities are utilizing a process known as holistic admissions. This basically just means that we are looking at the whole application, everything that a student provides to us in that college application will be used by our office in an effort for us to understand who you are as best as possible as a student, as a member of your community, as a person, all while we are trying to make an assessment of whether or not you are a strong match for our college, for our community, and our environment on our college campus. So we're looking at everything. There are a couple of different traits we look at throughout the application. I'll talk about those in just a second, but we find them everywhere. The easiest way to consider holistic review is that we're looking at everything. Everything you give us is going to, in some way, shape, or form, answer questions that we may have about who you are and help us better understand why you're a strong match for our university. At Hopkins, we're looking at three different themes, three different thematic areas across your application. Those would be your academic character, your impact and initiative, and then your overall match for the university. So for us, again, every school is going to be a little bit different here. When we think about academic character, we're trying to get a sense of who you are as a student. Are you prepared for college? Will you be successful once you're here? Are you going to pursue knowledge in a very active way, to demonstrate curiosity, to collaborate with others in the classroom, to connect ideas? We see academic character across the application, test scores, letters of recommendation, your transcripts, any other academic experiences that you might have. But we're also looking at your impact and initiative outside of the classroom. So this really is, anything you're doing that takes up time and is meaningful to you outside of the classroom. We're trying to get a sense of what impact you're going to have on our college campus. So this could be clubs, this could be organizations you're a part of, family responsibilities, jobs, competitions, programs, classes you've taken outside of school. Anything you're doing that takes up time and is meaningful to you helps us understand what you'll do outside of the classroom when you're with us. Your activities list really helps here, but we might learn about your impact through letters of recommendation. We might learn about them through the additional information section in your application, and we might learn about some of your impact through essays if you choose to write about an extracurricular experience in an essay. And then lastly, we're looking at this idea of overall match, which is to say that we as a university have done some reflection on what our values are. We've done some reflection on the type of environment that we want to have on our campus, and we are looking to see that there is some alignment between our values as a university and the values that you demonstrate through your lived experience. These could be things like collaboration, supporting others, connecting ideas from the classroom to something outside of the classroom. There are a lot of different things that we care about, and we know that we're not going to see all of these things in your application, right? There's a lot that you could theoretically share about who you are. We're hoping that we'll be able to learn about some of these traits in your application. And when it comes to match, we're seeing this everywhere, but the essays are truly a great place for us to get a sense of that idea of match. The essays are just one of many different components in your application. You can see those components here. But what they do is they give us a view, a vantage point to understand who you are, to see why you're aligned with us as a university in ways that we might not be able to see as clearly in other components of the application. So as you can see, there's lots of different things you'll be submitting. We've talked about most of these, but the essays are the focus of the application workshop we have today. But it's just a good reminder, your essays are not going to make the entire decision for us. We're still going to look at everything else in your application. When we're talking about the personal essay, which is our focus today, it might go by a few different names: the personal essay, the personal statement, the common application essay, if you're using the common application, the coalition essay, if you're using the coalition essay. The most important thing to remember is when we're talking about your personal statement, your personal essay, this is the essay that you are writing that is going to every single school you are applying to. So the information in it should be applicable to every school you're applying to, because every school is going to read it. The traits you're sharing, the experiences you're sharing should be qualities that every school will look at and think to themselves, this is something we're hoping to see in our student body and in our community. For us, as I've mentioned, the essay really is that window into who you are. There is the personal statement. There's also supplemental essays. So the personal statement, as I mentioned, every school you apply to is going to see it. The information you share should be able to be viewed by every school as something positively, whereas a supplemental essay is another prompt or multiple prompts that a school may ask you about their school specifically. It could be, why do you want to apply to the school? Why do you want to study this field? It could be, tell us about a time where you've collaborated. It could be, tell us about an experience where you changed your perspective. Every school might have different prompts here. The important thing is with the supplemental essay that a school is asking that question because they care about the answer and they feel like that answer will not be available for them anywhere else in the application. So if you are answering a supplemental essay, those answers should tie back to the school you're applying to. They should be specifically answering that question that you're being asked. Whereas again, that personal statement is going to be a little bit more broad, so it can be viewed by multiple schools. When we are looking at that personal statement, there are a lot of directions you can go when it comes to the topic, the writing style, what you choose to tell us about. I mentioned earlier, we know we're not going to learn everything about you in the application. And we're certainly not going to learn everything about you in the essay. But when you're writing the essay, you should really be thinking about those most important aspects of who you are that you feel like are not showing up anywhere else in the application. So a quality, an experience you've had, a hobby, a perspective, a value that you hold that you feel like we're not going to learn about by looking at your activities list or looking at the letters of rec that you have or the transcript that you've submitted. So for us, it really is an opportunity to learn more about who you are. There is no correct answer or no correct topic in the personal statement. There's no one thing we want to see written about. There's no one thing, no value you have to share. It should be authentic to you. We admitted over 2,000 students last year to Hopkins. We did not admit the same exact student 2,000 times. So for us, it's important that we get to know who you are, the authentic version of who you are, and something that you feel like is important to you, even if it's not something other folks might be writing about. So for us, again, it's a window into who you are. Answering those prompts directly is really helpful just so we can get an actual answer in your essay. The important tips when writing an essay. So for us, we use it to learn more about who you are. That's the short answer. We want to learn about you. The essay gives you a free place to write about some part of your experience. But as you are doing that, I think some important things to remember are that you should be the focus of your own essay. It might sound simple, but I think it's easy to talk about some experience you've had. It's easy to talk about a mentor in your life. It's easy to talk about someone that means something to you. All of those things are okay, but you want to ensure that through talking about some experience, through talking about another person or a mentor or a family member, we're still learning something about you. So you should tie every essay, regardless of the topic, back onto you so we can learn about who you are. It's okay to write in the first person. You don't have to follow any specific format in the essay. It's good generally to balance plot and personality. And what we mean by that is we want to see something evidence-based in your essay. At the end of the day, you're going to be telling us about something related to who you are. So say you want to share an essay with us about how you are a very resourceful person, how you take advantage of the opportunities around you, and you're always looking out for those opportunities. That's what you want to write about. If you just write that whole essay saying, I'm a resourceful person, I value resourcefulness, this is something that means a lot to me, we're not seeing any evidence as to why or how you are a resourceful person. So, having some type of anecdote, a story, a piece of evidence to highlight that trait can go a long way for us to see firsthand how you've demonstrated that quality. Similarly, if you are writing a whole essay and you're just sharing examples, then we're not necessarily seeing the takeaways that you have about it. If you spend your whole essay showing example or story after story about a time you've been resourceful, and then the essay just ends, we're not getting a good sense of how you've reflected on why that's important to you or how that might affect you moving forward. So a strong essay balances these two things, right? You're able to show some type of evidence about a quality that you have, again, an experience, a value, a trait, a hobby, whatever it is, you're showing it up to us with evidence, but you're also discussing why that's important. You're discussing what this has meant to you so we can see how you've reflected on it. I also feel like this is a great opportunity in the essays for you to lead us as an admissions office to the conclusions that you want us to have about who you are as a person, right? As you're looking at your whole application, as you're thinking about what to write your essay about, I think it's good to reflect on what are they learning about me? What are they not learning about me? And okay, so they're not learning about these aspects of who I am. I need to include that in an essay. I'm going to show evidence. I'm going to talk about why that's important. I want the admissions committee to know that this is who I am, and I'm going to use the essay to highlight that part of who I am. So you can lead us to those conclusions. It's a great opportunity for you to show us directly an area of match that you feel like you have, an area of alignment that you feel like you have for us as a university. Again, always proofreading is good. I think, take a look at it, have someone else take a look at it. We do have some example essays on our website, which are a great resource to use, but ultimately, you should be able to share your essay with someone, ask them, what did you learn about me as a person? And hopefully they have an answer to that question. If they don't, I might revisit it. I might approach it a little bit differently, but you can truly write about anything that you feel like is most important to you. Your essay should uplift your own perspective. It should not necessarily denigrate or belittle someone else's perspective. We want to learn about you and what's important to you. So you can really choose most topics, but again, make sure that through the topic you've chosen, you are highlighting who you are and what you think is something meaningful about your experience. So it's a little bit of a broad overview of how we look at the essays and some tips while we're approaching them. We do want to take some time to go through examples. So we do have two example essays to look at. The first essay that we're going to look at is something that we created in our office. It is not an actual essay by a student, but it does show some typical things that we see in essays. So we'll read through that, we'll discuss it, and then we will look at another essay that is an actual essay that a student has submitted, and we'll talk again about both of these essays. For anyone who cannot see the screen or they're unable to, I will read the essay out loud and then we will discuss it. So this is essay example 1. Her heart monitor flatlined. My heart stopped. As the room around me melted into a blur of the emergency crew trying to revive her, all I could think about was how young she was. It was the first day that I was allowed to oversee a chemotherapy treatment during my summer's internship in the cancer ward at Hastings Hospital. The patient had a type of kidney cancer known as renal cell carcinoma, RCC. I didn't know it at the time, but she had a case of metastatic RCC where the cancerous cells travel to other organs. She passed away due to intracranial hemorrhaging. Amidst the apparent chaos in the room, I carefully observed Dr. Hennigan, the primary investigator conducting the research I was involved with. Watching him work with such quick dexterity with every patient he had over that summer had more than convinced me that Dr. Hennigan was a phenomenal doctor. However, even this was not always enough. That moment not only solidified my desire to become a doctor, but it also made me realize that I must strive to obtain the best education that is available to me in order to save the lives of my patients. To do so, I would like to continue to explore the research world to broaden the already vast knowledge that exists in the medical field. I want to have the opportunity to be involved in cutting-edge research at a prestigious institution. Attending a prestigious undergraduate institution will also heighten my chances of being accepted into a world-renowned medical school that will provide me with all of the necessary skills to become a life-saving physician. As a medical student, I would apply my critical thinking abilities as well as other crucial talents obtained from my education to real-life patients in order to provide phenomenal care. My aptitude for learning quickly will prove to be an asset in the fast-paced curriculum of medical schools. In order to obtain my lifelong career goal of becoming a doctor, I must first learn all of the basics as a biology major and become a well-rounded individual to mold myself into an outstanding healthcare provider. As a doctor, the next time I am in the situation where a patient flatlines, I will not stand idly by. I will be able to actively save her life. So let's discuss this one. Again, we'll use the Q&A feature for any questions you have for us, but for our discussions, you can use the chat feature. As we're thinking about this essay, I want you all to think about for a second, what do we learn or do we learn anything about this student specifically? So feel free to throw something in the chat. Is there a trait we learn about this student? Are we learning anything about their qualities, their personality? So feel free. It doesn't have to be a whole sentence. If there's a word you think we learn about the student, feel free to throw it in the chat. We'll discuss. So we definitely see, thinking about some of the words that might be coming in, that this student is goal-oriented, right? They have a goal. They're thinking about their future. They have lots of different aspirations when it comes to those goals. We learn that they are pursuing knowledge in some way. They are taking this experience to learn from a professional, but I don't think there are as many personal qualities as we're learning about this student. We're seeing their perspective through an experience with someone else. So I think there's a few traits we could additionally be learning about that we're not learning about here, right? We're seeing that they're applying themselves. We're seeing that they're thinking long-term about their future. I also want us to think about, do we get a sense of how will this student be on an undergraduate college campus? And you're, again, welcome to throw any answers or any thoughts you have in the chat. But as we look at this essay, this student is thinking 2 steps ahead, right? They're thinking about medical school. They're thinking about their career. We're not really seeing what they're going to do as an undergraduate student. We're not really seeing the traits or the skills or the qualities that will make them strong contributors to a college environment at the undergraduate level. So I think we are learning things about this student through this essay, but we're not learning as much as we otherwise could be about who they are, about how they might contribute or get themselves involved in a college community. So again, we're learning some things, but we're not maybe learning as much as we otherwise could be. Let's look at essay number 2. So this essay is written by an actual student who applied to Hopkins. They were admitted to Hopkins and they are currently enrolled as a student at the university. Similarly, I will read this one out loud and then we can discuss it afterwards. Light on the upstroke, heavy on the downstroke. I was in 6th grade the first time I dipped my brush pen into the colorful world of calligraphy and hand lettering. It was late evening, and I had spent the latter portion of the day silently cruising through a typical YouTube deep dive, spending hours poring over videos on every topic imaginable, letting the information and entertainment float over, around, and through me. And now, calligraphy for beginners had begun autoplaying. Intrigued, I reached for a slightly dried out Crayola marker and began copying the loops appearing on the screen in front of me onto the nearest piece of paper. Hello, my pen looped. My name is. I think that. Swirls quickly crowded my page in vibrant colors of blues, reds, and browns. I soon traded these Crayola markers for Tombow brush pens and continued honing down my newfound art skill. At 12, there wasn't much I could express aside from doodling inspirational quotes found online and crafting happy birthday cards for my friends. Yet I would obsess over the visual appeal of letters, endlessly fascinated with the different ways I could arrange words and plaster them all over a page. Calligraphy soon became a creative outlet, and the therapeutic strokes often helped me wind down after a long day. Soon after starting high school, however, I quickly found a spot for my creations to shine within the world of graphic design. In my school's BIPOC Student Union Communications Committee, I'd work alongside others to research racial inequities of the past and present in order to craft educational Instagram posts for the club. While working with upperclassmen for an hour or so each week seemed daunting at first, I realized I had a ton to learn, both in the context of the issues we discuss each Wednesday afternoon and how we communicated our findings. Through experiences like these, I learned how to find my voice by sharing knowledge through artistic forms. Meanwhile, I never stopped creating. In my free time, I still enjoy crafting little pieces of art. As the current co-president in the BIPOC Student Union and editor-in-chief of the newspaper, sharing my skills in calligraphy was the way I opened up my own doors of opportunity. Calligraphy intertwined itself with my first and last name and is what people have remembered me by. Not only were the designs of my flyers and posters plastered through the school hallways and linked on email blasts, but the bright blue and orange graphics even sparked discussion at Board of Education meetings. I was then honored to speak in front of the school's foundation, where I presented ideas for the development of a Unity Center. Upon immediate approval of the center, I realized that although I won't be able to utilize the space, I am hopeful that it will cultivate an authentic environment where every square inch of the school embraces diversity. Through calligraphy, I empowered my own voice. I amplified the concerns of the communities I stood within. Most importantly, I listened from those around me and have been left with lasting impressions that I am sure to take with me. Now I am no stranger to the intersection between advocacy and art. So this essay is a little bit different than the last essay as we kind of discussed them. I think there are a couple things you're welcome again to put any questions or any I should say any thoughts or reactions in the chat. But as we're thinking about this second essay, there's a couple of things that we notice. First, the student is sharing a lived experience with us. They're sharing an anecdote, just like the first student did, right? The first student is talking about their time volunteering in a hospital. The second student is talking about being on YouTube, learning about calligraphy, and exploring that newfound interest that they have in calligraphy. This is something that anyone can do, right? Anyone can be on YouTube. This is not an experience that is hard for folks to find. So this is a very everyday experience that this student is discussing. They're on YouTube, they're searching videos, they are learning about calligraphy. And then they also talk about how they've taken that interest in calligraphy and applied it to other experiences that they have, how this one experience, this one interest that they found kind of blossomed into something much more impactful in a larger school and community environment. I think this one is interesting to see because we are seeing something that they might be talking about in their activities list, right? They might be talking about being newspaper editor. They might mention being co-president of the BIPOC Student Union in those activities that they list out in the application, but they are sharing information about those experiences that goes beyond what might be in the activities list. They are showing why they're getting involved, the impact that they're having through calligraphy, through speaking to the school board. So we're learning a little bit more than we might have been through that activities list. And what the second student also does, right, they're showing us this experience, right? Firsthand evidence. I got into calligraphy through YouTube videos. I then took that interest and I had an impact in a number of different clubs through it. At the end of that essay, they are reflecting a little bit about what that's meant to them and who it's going to mean and what it's going to mean for them moving forward. As we look at this last paragraph, this isn't a huge paragraph. It's not a whole essay in itself, which is totally fine. This student is taking a minute to reflect at the end. This is what calligraphy has allowed the student to do. This is who they have become, what they've learned, and you get a sense of who they might be moving forward because of this interest that they've developed. So if you think about this second essay, they are really sharing personal qualities, right? Again, that curiosity, that willingness to learn, to listen to others, to take an interest and impact a larger community, to connect ideas. We're learning a lot about who they are as a person, and we're able to visualize, because of that, who they're going to be in college, right? They're going to get involved. They are going to take their interests, share them with others. They're also going to listen and learn from others. So there's a lot of qualities that we're learning about from this second essay. Both of these essays could be from students who are admitted to Hopkins, right? The essay, as I mentioned at the beginning, is not the only part of the application. It is not the only thing we're looking at. It is an opportunity for you as an applicant to share more information with us about who you are. We learned information about both of these students who wrote these essays. However, the second one, we're getting a little bit more. We're seeing more firsthand evidence, and we're seeing how that might impact their undergraduate experience, whereas that first student focused a lot on their long-term career aspirations. So, like I said, they both solidified our understanding of the students, one more so than the other, and they should theoretically work in concert with the rest of the application, right? Both of these students probably talked about some of those experiences elsewhere. Student 2, like I said, probably talked about their clubs and organizations in the activities list. Student 1 probably mentioned that they were shadowing at a hospital in their activities list as well, but they talk about it a little bit more in depth in that essay. So you can definitely talk about extracurricular experiences that might be on your activities list in your essays. You can talk about things in your essays that we might see somewhere else, but I'd always think about how can I deepen the admissions committee's understanding of this trait, of this part of who I am through the essay. The last few things we'll talk about before we open it up to Q&A are how to get started. This is a lot of information. There's a lot of directions you can go with the essay. What do you do? Like, how do you get from an idea to a written draft of an essay? There are a lot of things you could share with us. I mentioned this earlier, but I would always encourage students to check out our website. We have an Essays That Worked webpage where you can see essays that were successful from previous applicants, along with some of our committee feedback about those essays. Your essays do not need to look like those. Those are the top like 1% of 1% of essays that we see in our process. Not everyone is going to write those essays. Most students who are admitted to Hopkins do not write essays that look exactly like that, but we feel like those are essays that highlight certain traits of the essay writing process that we found successful. They're a great place to start as you are thinking about how can I structure an essay? What are some directions students have gone in the past? As you start to write your own essay, it is good to brainstorm. I think oftentimes it's easy to think, all right, I definitely want to talk about this in my essay. I'm going to write my essay about this experience that I had. But then you start writing and you think to yourself, wow, I actually don't have anything to say about this, or this is not a good essay. I don't know how to make this a better essay. So for us, we do encourage you to write a couple of ideas out. I would think about what are qualities, traits, characteristics about yourself that you want us to know as an admissions committee. What are things you want us to learn about who you are? Come up with 3 to 5, maybe more, a bunch of different ideas. And then think of a personal story, an experience that you might have that demonstrates each of those qualities. It might be that the thing you thought you wanted to write about is actually going to be a much harder essay for you than another trait or another quality or another experience that you have that you could possibly share with us. So start with a broad list of ideas, think about anything you might want us to know, and see which essay makes the most sense for you. And as I mentioned earlier, when you finish that draft, share it with someone. Ask them, what do you learn about who I am? They should be able to learn about that thing you're hoping that they're learning about, that trait, that hobby, that experience, that aspect of who you are. So please, as you're writing those essays, start with a lot of ideas. Don't back yourself into a corner. Any number of topics could be an effective essay. We, as I've mentioned many times now, know that we are not going to learn every possible thing about you. So the essay is a place for you to share those most important things that you want us to know in the most effective way. The last thing I'll mention real quick is as we go into the application season, we have a couple of different application deadlines. We look at essays for students who apply in every deadline. Our early decision 1 deadline has passed for this year, but we do have an early decision 2 and a regular decision deadline. These are both coming up in early January. Early decision 2 is a binding round of applications, so you're making that decision to attend the university should you be accepted. Regular decision is not binding. But we will look at students for admissions in all of those different rounds. If you've got questions about the application process as well, happy to talk about that in the Q&A. The last slide we'll have before I stop sharing is just a couple of additional resources. We've mentioned the Essays That Worked page, but if you're interested in learning more about Hopkins, we're happy to share with you through social media. You can reach out to members of our admissions office directly. We have student blogs on our website if you want to read about their experiences, and then you can connect with students directly on our website as well if you want to learn from some current students. So we encourage you to reach out if you got more questions about us as a university, but we do have some time now. I've seen a couple questions come through in the Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing and we are going to dive into those questions. So if you do have more questions, feel free to continue to add them to the Q&A. We've got around 15 to 20 minutes to go through them. So I've got a question in here about the quality of writing in your essay and how do we evaluate, say, an essay that is like a award-winning piece of literature versus an essay that shares some good qualities. It does a good job highlighting who you are, but it might not be written in that same prosaic or literature-esque way. The short answer here is both of those essays could be effective. One could be effective, the other couldn't. It could be that someone writes an essay that is incredibly polished and has very strong writing, but we don't actually learn much about the student. Whereas an essay that might be a little bit more straightforward, we're learning quite a bit about who you are. And so, we notice the quality of writing in your essays, but the most important thing is what we learn about who you are as a person. We do have great programs in English and creative writing at Hopkins, if that is the direction you want to go with your studies. But not every student at Hopkins is going to be a creative writer. So for us, we want to just make sure that ultimately what the essay is used for is learning about who you are. So again, if you feel like you're not a native English speaker, you might not write in a way that is super, to use the words of this question, advanced. That is okay. I would focus on highlighting information that you feel like would be helpful for us to know, that'd be good for us to know. So please be encouraged to know that for us, the quality of writing, it should be legible. It should be able to be read by our office, but the most important thing is that we're able to take information out of that essay and learn about who you are. There's a question here about kind of like the general application process for different academic interests, whether it's computer science, whether it's other things. And there's a kind of a side question here about, do you need to write in your essay about an area of academic interest that you have? You certainly don't. For us at Hopkins, you do not need to apply into specific majors. The exception is our biomedical engineering program. Some schools will be different. Some schools you apply into a specific major, some schools you apply into a specific program or a larger school within the school. That's not the case with us. Even for biomedical engineering, there's no different application essay you need to write. at Hopkins. For us, you can write about an area of academic interest you have, but you certainly don't need to. We're hopefully getting a sense of your academics through other parts of the application. I mentioned a few of them at the beginning, your transcripts, test scores, letters of rec, maybe experiences you have that are academic outside of the classroom. So we are looking for evidence that supports your academic interests in some way, shape, or form. It does not need to be an essay. That being said, if you want to write an essay about what you're passionate about, what you're curious about, and you're supporting that with evidence, you can certainly do that as well. But we don't have any limits to the number of students who are admitted into certain programs other than BME. And for us, the application process, the essay writing process is going to be the same for everyone, regardless of what they want to study at Hopkins. See, a couple quick questions I'll run through that are in here. Do we have a resources library in Islamabad? For Hopkins, we don't have any centers in Pakistan. EducationUSA, I'm not sure outside of Lahore. I don't know if you want to weigh in on where some other centers are, but some other quick questions here. I think for non-traditional applicants, we're looking to see that you have the equivalent of a high school education. So if you have a placement exam, a GRE, if you're applying after you've graduated high school, there's no age limit to apply. We will still ask for all of the same parts of your application, though. So if you graduate high school, take a gap year, take a few gap years, or come back after some other life experiences, that's totally okay, but we will ask for the same parts of the application. Question about scholarships for international students. So for us, when it comes to financial support, we have both need-based and merit-based scholarships for students. Need-based, we do meet 100% of demonstrated need for all students who are admitted to Hopkins, which means that if you have any financial need and you apply for financial aid and are admitted, we're committed to meeting 100% of that need that you have. We are need aware for international citizens. So if you are not U.S. citizen, we do have to consider how much money you need from us when we make our admissions decisions. But your best chance of being admitted and getting the financial support you need is to apply for financial aid. If you don't apply for that financial support and you get into the university and then you come back asking us for financial support, we will not be able to give it to you retroactively. So if you need financial aid, we encourage you to apply for it at the time of application. There are merit-based scholarships as well that international students are eligible for. There's just no guarantee that you would receive a merit-based scholarship. So we do encourage you to apply for need-based aid. Quick question here, more about the Hopkins side of things. Do we have a physics and astronomy program? We certainly do. We've got a great one. I could actually talk about it for a long time. I think it's a really cool program. Our physics department has some really great resources. One of our professors in the physics department, Adam Rees, is a Nobel Prize winner in physics. We do have a space telescope on campus. I'm not sure how familiar you are all with the James Webb Space Telescope, but all of the data from the James Webb Space Telescope is actually analyzed by labs on our undergraduate campus. So if you are interested in physics and astronomy, there's great hands-on opportunities. There's some of the top professors in the world. Hopkins is the #1 school for research in the United States. So again, lots of funding available for research, but the professors are great. The facilities are great if you are interested in physics and astronomy. There's a good question here about the application review process. If there's any weightage given to a GPA versus an SAT or an ACT score. So I think it's a great question. How do we balance things? So in our application review process, we are weighing a lot of different components of your application. Everything you submit to us is either going to provide a piece of evidence as to why you're a strong match for our university, or it might raise a question about whether or not you're that strong match, right? So if you feel like your GPA has some holes in it. Maybe there was a class you didn't do as well in, but you have a really strong standardized test score. We're looking at both of those things. that transcript might raise some questions for us, but then the standardized test score might answer some of those questions. It might provide some additional information that helps us understand your academic character, and vice versa. You might be doing really well in school. Your GPA is great. Your standardized test is a little bit lower. The GPA in school might help answer some questions that the standardized test had. So it is a combination of evidence across your application. If you feel like there's anything in your application that's going to raise a question in our admissions process, any college or university admissions process, I think about how can we offset this, right? If there is a grade that's not quite what you'd like it to be, or you didn't take a class you feel like is going to be required or helpful moving forward, how can you show proficiency in that subject elsewhere, whether it's, it could be an academic competition, it could be an online course that you take, it could be some other type of experience. So there's no like formula for how exactly we weigh these things, but we're looking at evidence across your application. We never just look at one thing and stop the conversation there. So please be encouraged that, we're going to look at everything, lots of different components in the application. And if you feel like there's anything that's going to raise a question mark, think about how can you provide information that helps answer why or still allows us to see why you're a strong match for us as a university. A couple questions in here about master's programs and PhD programs. We work in the undergraduate admissions office, so we're not going to be able to speak to those quite as much, but you are able to reach out to master's programs, PhD programs directly. You can reach out to professors if they've got their email addresses listed on their website, which most of them do. You're welcome to reach out to them. And same thing for PhD programs, so feel free to reach out to those professors. We do offer some summer programs. There's a question here about that. There are both in-person summer programs for high school students on our campus, and there are programs virtually that Hopkins offers for high school students. And then there are exchange programs for students already in college to do things at Hopkins. So summer.jhu.edu is going to be a great resource if you have any questions about what summer programs look like at Hopkins. Feel free to check that out. A similar question about the chemistry department as the physics and astronomy department. So the chemistry department at Hopkins is actually one of the oldest chemistry departments in the United States. It's a really great program. One of the first professors in chemistry at Hopkins, one of the first heads of department, Ira Remsen, is actually a chemist who discovered saccharin, which is an artificial sweetener, which has blossomed into, of course, a huge industry, lots of artificial sweeteners in the world. So there's lots of, again, hands-on opportunities. There's no space telescope in the chemistry department because they are different fields, but there are lots of lab spaces for students interested in chemistry, from the natural sciences. Again, they all benefit from being, and any program at Hopkins really being at the top research program in the United States. So plenty of hands-on opportunities and research opportunities to do with professors or to do your own independent research as well. Lots of different grants for students to do that type of work. So there's one last question here in the Q&A. We do have another 5 minutes or so if you do have more questions to throw in there. When it comes to English language proficiency in our undergraduate application process, if you go to school at a school where the medium of instruction is English, we do not require an English proficiency exam, although it is recommended to submit one just in case. For us, when it comes to that, if you're at a school that does not English language as the medium of instruction, we accept Duolingo, TOEFL, IELTS, a couple different language proficiencies that we accept students to submit. All of them you can submit as part of the college application process. And then when it comes to GPAs, if you have GPAs from a college experience you've done elsewhere, a high school experience you've done elsewhere, we look at whatever GPA your school, the university, the high school submits to us. So if a school gives us a GPA, that is what we use. We always look to understand what that means, right? So what is the rigor of the classes you're taking, the curriculum that you're in? But if your school provides us a GPA, we do not recalculate it. And then For students who do not have a GPA, we will calculate a GPA looking at your courses, just so we have one. But again, we're always looking at the types of courses you're in, how you're doing in those courses. We look at trends in grades. Maybe things were a little bit more challenging earlier on, but things have gotten better. That's always something we'll pay attention to. Question here about open undergraduate courses at Hopkins for high school students or just for folks in general. Again, Hopkins does offer some courses online through our Center for Talented Youth. There's some other programs to take courses at Hopkins. The summer.jhu.edu website is going to be really helpful in pointing you in those directions. Again, for another question about master's programs, we do encourage you to reach out to any master's professors or programs directly if you've got questions about that, since we do not speak or we're not involved in the master's application process quite as much.
Thank
Cool.
you,
I'm not seeing,
Ryan.
any more
Yes.
questions.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say exactly. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much, Eva, for answering all the questions. I know there was a lot, and we really appreciate all the time and effort that you've spent for our students today. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate once again you having us, and have a great evening, everyone. And hopefully we'll connect with you at some point in the future through any of our other resources. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Goodbye.